Hello and welcome to Interfaith Scholar Weekend 2021. I'm Jim Grant, who serves as hundreds of people in the Valley have been enriched and learned much about many different faiths. They have learned that they are part of a continuum of faiths: Judaism, Islam, Christianity, Sikhism, Buddhism, Hinduism. We are glad that today we are able to continue this discussion around the theme of bearing witness from Fresno's Mason-Dixon line. This afternoon, we begin the first of our book study sessions on Begin Again. We've invited Reverend Dr. Paul Binion, pastor of the Westside Church of God, to represent the Christian faith as we discuss the book by Professor Glaude on James Baldwin, Begin Again. Joining Reverend Binion would be Reverend Anna Lopez and Daniel O'Connell, who will share their reflections with him. Our book study will be for 4 more weeks, and it's being hosted at Fresno City College. We are so glad that we could invite today the president of that fine institution, Dr. Carole Goldsmith, who will welcome our guest speakers and our respondents. We are so proud that Fresno City College is such a good sponsor of our event again this year. Dr. Goldsmith is recognized as an expert on workforce development, community collaboration, and career technical education. She believes that all great cities, including high-performing education systems, and understands the importance in education to provide opportunities to change lives and therefore change communities. Dr. Goldsmith personally is the recipient of the Marianne Laniello Award from the California Community College Association of Community and Continuing Education, which celebrates her work in economic development. She was recognized by the CSU Alumni Association Working for California initiative for her advancement of all things relating to workforce education, and has received outstanding alumna recognition from her alma mater, Fresno State. Her wholehearted support for this year's Interfaith Scholar Weekend webinar series is just further evidence of her commitment to the kind of education that provides opportunities to change lives and advance communities. Dr. Goldsmith.
Well, thank you so much for that very warm welcome. I am so happy to be here virtually to welcome you all to tonight's book study. You know, Fresno City College, we are the first community college in California, so we stand on a rich legacy of working together with our community partners. And I have to say, you know, part of Fresno, we need to be very proud of our interfaith scholar community. The interfaith community that has come together today represents many, many different religious backgrounds and beliefs and faith traditions. And I think it's really insightful today to bring so many different theologians together to talk about this important book, Begin Again, and really the impact of racial matters, our own Mason-Dixon line here in Fresno, and what that's done to us in the past and what it's continuing to do. At Fresno City College, we are leaning in and have been leaning in on having courageous conversations around history and race and how do we make our community better together through education. So tonight we are a proud sponsor. We've been sponsoring events with the Interfaith Alliance for many years, and we hope to continue to do so. And so in tonight's spirit, I just thank all of you. And I really want to give a special thank you to Pastor Paul Binion of the Westside Church of God, who's going to be leading us tonight. But he's also been a tremendous champion of education on the West Side and has hosted a number of events for Fresno City College as we plan to have our newest center in West Fresno. And I just want to thank him again for the many times he has hosted conversations at his church. And we are always happy to spend time with him, and always in gratitude, because he truly does bring people together. So tonight, you're in for a treat, because we have some amazing people, and with Ana Lopez and Daniel O'Connell talking tonight, and talking about this very important book that I hope all of you have had a chance to read, because it really does illuminate what's going on today. So thank you again, and congratulations on a successful book read.
Thank you very much, Dr. Goldsmith. Now I'd like to invite Reverend Ana Lopez, who is the founding member of the New Thought community in Fresno, to lead us in the land acknowledgement. Reverend Ana.
We come today to honor all ancestors of this land, those that have walked before us, those that walk next to us. We honor the local Yokut tribe. We honor the local Mono tribe. Teximuyu taitanchi sueracocha, Teximuyu nunantin, kanchai huknuyuk, hanan kanchaipa, hurin kanchaipa. Munai Sonko. To honor these tribes and all that Earth Mother gives us, we take a few moments of silence. Please. We bring deep gratitude to Pachamamita, Earth Mother, for all two-legged and all four-legged, all winged brothers and sisters, the brothers and sisters of the water and the creepy crawly, the slithery kind, the tall standing tree, the rock people, all those who walk this sacred earth. Aho mitakiyu oyasen. Aho.
Thank you, Reverend Ana Lopez, for that beautiful land acknowledgement of the peoples on whose land we are now standing. Our moderator for today's webinar is Ashli M. Kosinski, the co-founder of Wildflower Collective. Wildflower Collective has a purpose as an organization to focus on supporting the Central Valley's most marginalized communities through harm reduction, outreach, advocacy, housing, and other mental health supports. She is passionate about using behavior science as a way to positively impact public health, substance use, and education. Ashli's perspective as a queer, BIPOC female with a white lived experience has greatly enriched our own Interfaith Scholar Weekend Committee, and her work as information coordinator for this committee and for this weekend 2021 has been particularly outstanding. Thank you, Ashli Kosinski.
Thank you, Jim Grant. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be sharing space with you all. I'd like to introduce Reverend Dr. Paul Binion Jr., the senior pastor at Westside Church of God in Fresno, California, and also a member of the working committee for the Interfaith Scholar Weekend. Pastor Binion is currently working for justice for all constituencies, primarily in Southwest Fresno. He concerns himself with fellow citizens regardless of their socioeconomic definitions, and continues to engage with persons of various faith traditions to accomplish the works of justice and compassionate care, which includes feeding the hungry from the commercial grade kitchen at Westside Church of God. In his article on Fresno's history of redlining, published in the Los Angeles Review of Books, Dr. Nathan Hensley, one of our 3 guest scholars from our opening panel, mentions Pastor Binion as among our legendary Fresno activists who came of age in the 1960s. Pastor Binion says he wishes to share, learn, and interact with his fellow citizens in the struggle that has marked life in our great country for hundreds of years. I'd like to welcome Reverend Dr. Paul Binion Jr. to the stage.
Thank you very kindly for that great introduction, and greetings to all of you. I'm very happy to be a part of this great scholars weekend. And let me begin by saying again, I'm so happy that all of you are a part. And again, we know we're going to enjoy our time together. I'm speaking with regard to my response and some thoughts again from the book, Begin Again, by Professor Eddie Glaude. And so allow me to take a few minutes to share with you some things from a couple of the chapters that I read. And again, we're looking forward to the interaction and sharing we'll have later on. But as I first of all looked at the introduction for the book, I'm always interested in noting what is the impetus, what is the reason for the purpose of the book, of one authoring a book. And again, Professor Glaude made this very, very clear. He references again the well-known African-American author, James Baldwin. And again, I'm going back many years. Let me go back 50 years, and I was an undergrad. And I read many, many of Mr. Baldwin's writings. Throughout the book, he refers to him as Jimmy. And so when you hear me say Jimmy, I'm referencing Mr. James Baldwin. He began sharing about an honor, again, he received in the introduction of the book as he went to Heidelberg University in Germany. And really, he spoke of his gratitude for the time he spent away, relieved of the constant interviews and press inquiries for conversations and explanations and commentary. And he spent some time, what I'll use the word musing, much time contemplating and meditating as he was away. He took a trip to where, again, Mr. Baldwin, Jimmy, spent many years. He took a trip from Germany over to France to discover, again, that his home was no longer present, again, because they had destroyed his home, again, to make way for luxury accommodations. But he saw himself, and he saw why Mr. Baldwin spent some time abroad, addressing his own internal struggles and a time away from he referred to, quote unquote, the racist nonsense of America. But as Jimmy took time away, Professor Glaude experienced it as well, again, for a much shorter period of time. But he talked about the silence he enjoyed, giving them time to reimagine. And his time in Heidelberg provided some very crucial distance and a brief refuge, he says, from the reality of life in America. He spoke of a distant vantage point. And when he's speaking of, again, the occupant of the White House for the past 4 years, Mr. Donald Trump, and talking about, again, his contemplation regarding race and state of politics, understanding that, as Mr. Baldwin stated, that he had come to an understanding that the country, he really came to understand things more as he was away from the country outside of the USA, seeing and viewing and contemplating as he witnessed the ruins again of Mr. Baldwin's home there in France. And in his own mind, questions were raised. Why the betrayal of America, of the Black freedom struggle, and the ugliness that consumed our nation, and what to do when faith was lost in a place that we call home. They're witnessing the wreckage, and he remembers Jimmy's witnesses, his answer to, again, these troubling questions. The professor said he decided then to write a book. He had questions, and being there in France and even spending time there in Germany, in Heidelberg, he was again inspired to write a book. Begin Again, what he entitled the book, as he pondered what he had to do. The idea of America, he noted, was in very, very serious trouble. The presidency of Mr. Donald Trump unleashed forces howling beneath our politics. A white resentment had surfaced. Corporate America had put a stranglehold on our government, cutting American workers, as he said, at their knees. And the idea of the public good and benefit became secondary to self-pursuits and interests. And Professor Glaude said that there needed to be a response to the concern of America concerning and truly seeking to be, really going to be truly a multiracial democracy. And the call to make America great again became a regular statement. again, amounting, in his opinion, to nostalgic longings for a time under siege by current events and desperate attempts to step back into a past that will never be retrieved. America has again turned its back, he said, to its Black citizenry in reading and studying. He said from the thousands of pages he read of the writing and essays of Mr. Baldwin. Professor Glaude said if he was going to write the book, he needed to understand how Mr. Baldwin, of all people, navigated the disappointments of his era, maintaining a faith and hope for our nation would be better. And so in sharing even some personal things about his personal relationship with his father, his natural father, and the frustration and hoping and wishing for a better day, as with the book he entitled Begin Again, he wanted readers to think with Mr. Baldwin how to interrogate America's insidious view of race propagated by what he called Trumpism, how efforts have been frustrated to achieve a more righteous reality. The America idea, again, is in trouble, according to Professor Glaude. And he closes his introduction by saying, as he scoured the rubble and ruins of Mr. Baldwin's world, his life and his works, hoping for a different story, he found an answer to his own shaken faith. Not everything is lost. Responsibility cannot be lost. It can be abdicated. And if one refuses the abdication, one again begins again. And again, this was the theme that he used to compose his book. But then I read the next chapter. Again, he entitled the chapter, The Lie. And Professor Glaude makes a very clear analysis and conclusion of the past, and regretfully of our current reality from one of Mr. Baldwin's major writings and Notes of a Native Son. A challenge to America would be to grapple with the contradiction at the heart of its self-understanding. The fact that in this so-called democracy, people believe that the color of one's skin determine the value of an individual. That's the lie. It is that belief that has justified the dehumanization entire groups of people in our country have experienced. Mr. Baldwin argued in this debasement and definition of Black people, white people have debased and defined themselves. And this understanding, Professor Glaude takes up, again, Mr. Baldwin's writings and philosophy in referencing the American condition and constitute the title of his chapter, which he entitled The Lie. Mr. Baldwin challenged America to face up to, again, the lie, and the lie being that white lives have always mattered more than others. So Black folks must be inferior, less human, deserving of their station in life. They must be lazy and dishonest and sexually promiscuous and given to criminality, just looking for a handout from the government. And America is fundamentally good and innocent, but has just experienced a few missteps, many will say. Again, a path to a more perfect union, genocide of Native people, slavery, racial apartheid, Japanese internment camps, and the subordination of our women were just, again, missteps, but again, Professor Glaude would say they're lies. America's avoided telling the truth on herself and the unjust treatment of African-American citizens and so many other groups as well. For white folks in our nation, protecting a quote unquote America is an identity worth protecting at any cost. And that truth doesn't matter. Again, Mr. Baldwin said America chose itself over a truly just and multiracial society, a betrayal, and left much devastation in its wake. He challenged America continually to plunge beneath the surface of the race problem and examine, again, our interior agreement with ways of thinking that has trapped us in the lie. The professor shares Mr. Baldwin's grief and trauma and disappointment as he watched white Americans turn away from the difficulties of genuine change, often embracing nostalgia, again, when Black people, quote unquote, knew their place and were not in the streets protesting in order to justify their refusal to give up the lie. And the election of Barack Obama ended for many people the ideal and the perception of America's need, again, to even seek for racial justice. We've elected a Black man, they said. A Black man now sits in the White House. So his ascendancy to the presidency was seen as an ending even for civil rights efforts in our country. And we know that's a lie. Professor Glaude, the election of Trump He said, lurched the country to the far right. It split the country, reasserting the lie. Perpetrators of the lie have become emboldened and enabled because of our past president. It was said, and still is, making America great, making America great. And what is meant, Professor Glaude has said, in the minds of many, particularly our white citizens, that Black and brown folks threaten our way of life. And the delight of many have made America again what we want, a white America. The path to a different America, Mr. Baldwin would say, is to accept the reality of America's racist past and how that has distorted our sense of who we really are. Mr. Baldwin fully understood the power of the American lie, but we must not lose sight, even in our pain and disillusionment with America, the possibility of a new, making a biblical reference to a new Jerusalem. The lie has warped reality in this country. We must be witnesses, Mr. Baldwin would say. He would say, we must be witnesses and become resources for a new reality. And we cannot, must not, and will not concede to the lie. Lastly, in Professor Glaude's conclusion, he said, we stand at a critical point with the lie of the American idea in full view. A lesson learned from digging through the rubble, he said, of Mr. Baldwin's writings, we don't have to try to save white people. We keep working to build a better world where the color of one's skin matters little in the quality of life that one chooses to live. If we all, Mr. Baldwin would say, would commit to fight, all of us, we can have a new America. In fact, he would say, we can save America. Fight for an America that frees us from categories that blind us, implementing policies that remedy generational old injustices, demonstrate in our living and political arrangements the value of every human, that every person, every life is sacred, and build again this new Jerusalem using a biblical reference where the value gap cannot breathe, is what Professor would say to us. We can't allow the current political moments to strangle our imaginations, Professor Glaude would say. The survival of an enslaved people in this country, as Professor Glaude so eloquently articulates, is because they found, again, African-American people found when slavery in Christianity to imagine themselves as they really were, children of God. They had moments where they broke free from their reality as it was because they imagined a world as it could be. Mr. Baldwin always believed that we as a people could be much better than what we are. He always understood the battle to choose life was fought daily, and the imagination was a most potent weapon. He fought for that insight. He fought against the constant betrayal of our country, his own rage and despair, and for the generations yet to be born. And Professor Glaude would say that Mr. Baldwin left us a roadmap for a better country and a better world. And we cannot, never, ever throw our hands up in defeat and accept despair. A new America, a new America, where all of us feel at home. And again, our nation's contradictions will cease again to matter to us. Mr. Baldwin would say, and Professor Glaude concluded, that love is the only thing, the one force that transcends all of our differences, and which we will allow nothing to get in our way when we truly love one another. Thank you for listening. Back to you, back to you, back to you.
Thank you, Reverend Binion. Now I'd like to introduce Reverend Ana Maria Lopez to the stage. Reverend Ana Maria Lopez is an ordained minister through Emerson Institute and a founding member of New Thought Community in Fresno, California. Reverend Ana embodies a unique perspective of Indigenous cosmology and modern spirituality in her activism and service to others, and is often invited by Fresno's Interfaith Alliance to attend peaceful rallies as a representative of women of color, immigrant and Indigenous populations, and the LGBTQ community. Reverend Ana nurtures the hearts and minds of her spiritual community by facilitating workshops that explore transcendental philosophies and other foundational universal principles on which New Thought Community was formed. Reverend Ana?
Hello. Uh, Thank you, Pastor Binion and everyone, Fresno City College, Dr. Goldsmith, and all the committees and all the people that helped to bring this forward for us so that we can have this remembrance of what we're doing today. We are not only beginning again, but we are really seeing who we are on this hero's journey. Pastor Binion, I just love you dearly and all your words and who you are as your heart for our community. And I so appreciate you being here with us and in Fresno. As you know, Fresno is not an easy place to live from a person of color. So reading this book, reading James Baldwin and Begin Again, that this is a Black man that had to travel outside the United States so that he could be free to be himself, a Black man and a gay man. We struggle with that here in Fresno, and how that exposes, I'm having a little trouble with my computer. Sorry.
Hello, everyone. Let's just give Reverend Anna a moment to sort out her technical difficulties.
Can you see me again?
Yes, we can see you and we could still hear you.
Oh my gosh. So sorry, my computer was doing something weird.
Go ahead.
So I don't know how much time I have left, but I really wanted to bring the point of when I was reading this book, I was really visualizing James Baldwin on his hero's quest and how his hero's journey started with that separation from the United States so that he could have his experience what freedom felt like. And for him in the United States, he made this statement, give me liberty or give me death, was a scary thing coming from a person of color. But it was not a scary thing coming from somebody that was white. Then they were considered a hero. So his experience outside of the United States really gave him a different vision of being a true human. And the United States was started with many of the indigenous as not being human. We were not given rights. People of color were not given rights. We were seen as property. Women were seen as property. And the United States has really had to go through those dark places of initiation. Rosa Parks, we all say she was courageous, but truth is, I know she was afraid. I would have been afraid. I'm afraid every time I get on a corner or I go to march, but I know that I cannot be anywhere else but right there. Pastor Binion comes forward in every day in the Fresno community and creates that space for us to walk next to him and walk for ourselves. In Fresno, it is a hard walk, a hard trail to walk. So when we are on this hero's journey here and experiencing the initiation of being a different color, different sexual orientation, then we really have to look at what has happened before us and how can we carry this forward. My grandmother used to always say, get up, begin again, get up. James Baldwin was so involved with the younger community and going from college to college so that our young community, our young advocates can know that they're not alone. And we were really excited to have this book to come forward for us so that we can have this discussion on what this means to us and how we can carry this torch forward. We are not defeated until we say we are defeated. And we will always rise up and walk through those gates of that New Jerusalem. And for me and my family and my community and my tribes, we do that every day. And every morning we say thank you and we get up and we begin again. I do this for my daughter who going through school wanted to bleach her skin and be a different color. How can I show her that things have changed? Are they where we want them to be? No, but we can do this. And I am in deep gratitude for Interfaith Alliance for inviting me to begin again. Give me liberty or give me death. For we walk in love and we can be that change. We will never give up. Thank you so much for inviting me. Aho.
Thank you, Reverend Anna. Definitely a message of working together to address these issues. Next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Daniel O'Connell to the stage. Daniel O'Connell, PhD, is the executive director of the Central Valley Partnership and is coming from the Quaker Buddhist perspective. Years ago, Daniel was a Peace Corps volunteer in post-apartheid Namibia, where his experience reinforced his work to overturn racism and white supremacy in California and the United States. As a lifelong activist, he has sought new ways to meaningfully make progress. At UC Davis, he researched how social segregation and institutionalized racism were constructed in a rural farm worker community. Subsequently, he attended Cornell University for his doctoral degree, where he analyzed the work of, quote, politically engaged scholars who had confronted agribusiness in the San Joaquin Valley and California. Currently, he applies his life experience and academic training as the executive director of the Central Valley Partnership, a multiracial, intergenerational, and gender-inclusive network dedicated to achieving social, racial, environmental, and economic justice in the San Joaquin Valley.
Hello, everyone. Such an honor to be here. I'd like to begin with a moment of centering stillness to think about what we've heard and to begin to move forward. What a pleasure it's been to be at the intersection of Baldwin, Glaude, and Pastor Binion, a personal hero of mine. I'm going to make some categorical statements. I find no other way to move forward in the conversation and to acknowledge what has happened in the United States and here in the Central Valley and here in Fresno. First, the simple statement that the United States is an endemically, horrifically racist country, started by genocide and slavery. A lot of white people want to excuse themselves from this history because they see or sense that there's some sort of trajectory that's getting better. Yet, all white people are culpably responsible for racism, both historic and how it's engendered today. White people cannot passively receive the benefit of their privileged position in an unjust social structure and racist cultural framework without being complicit in oppression. And I would state that this is a morally untenable position. We can't extricate ourselves from the benefits that accrue from whiteness or cisgendered maleness, though we need to try. What we can do, and which is vitally important for white identifying people, is to take explicitly anti-racist public positions and to attack all forms of institutionalized racism. We might not have access to the cultural forms of racism, the subconscious forms of racism. Through our spirituality, we potentially can if we center into the goodness of God. But what we absolutely cannot tolerate is its institutional forms that are above ground and very visible and still present in our community. When I was asked to speak, I was reticent here. I didn't know what I could add. I said to the planning committee that there was a fire in the house. The planning committee is mostly white people. That white Christianity and its churches are so deeply implicated in all of this, and we just haven't done enough. Historically, the Catholic Church, its role in the conquest and colonization, Dutch Reformed Church in South Africa. I lived in Namibia that had been colonized by the Boers. The Dutch Reformed Church was completely implicated in apartheid. Here, with Jim Crow, our own apartheid in America, the Southern Baptist Church played a key role of that. And in recent times, just now, the white evangelical community and other churches utterly complicit in Trumpism, all active in the violent subordination of people of color, and especially African Americans. Baldwin, we watch him in this book go from disappointment to despair to anger, very quickly to anger. His encounter with America, America's betrayal of the Black freedom struggle, the racism in our society like a cancer. I'll end with this. There's a line in the book that whiteness as identity is a moral choice. And I would premise upon white people that we need to radically deconstruct what whiteness is on moral grounds. And to end with a very unquakerly reference to John Brown. John Brown ferociously went after slavery. And though Quakers will not use, and I will not use violence, I think the same ferocity that John Brown brought together a few handful of people and went after the racists, went after the slaveholders in the most uncompromising ways. The spirit of John Brown must animate the white community if we're going to save our democracy. And you could see in the last election how close we've come to losing our democracy, and the attacks are going to keep coming. And so we better drop these pretenses of privilege, or we'll lose the whole game, our blessed, beautiful community, the hope of a multiracial democracy. It's all on the line now. I'll end with that. And just to say again, it's such an honor to be here speaking with Pastor Paul Binion, a personal hero of mine and of the communities in particularly West Fresno, and the history of redlining and racism that's here, and the continued Mason-Dixon lines that perpetrate our culture and our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel. A lot to consider, a lot moving through my body listening to you speak, and I appreciate your straightforwardness. That is the purpose of this whole series, is to truly take a look at what is happening here in Fresno. With that, I'd like to bring back all of our speakers so we can engage in a community conversation. Hello, everyone. So I would like to begin this off with a question, as all of you had touched upon this particular quote. On page 7, Glaude says, according to these lies, Black people are essentially inferior, less human than white people, and therefore deserving of their particular station in American life. We see these lies every day in the stereotypes that Black people are lazy, dishonest, sexually promiscuous, prone to criminal behavior, and only seeking a handout from big government. White-bodied supremacy has authored this lie that Glaude speaks of. The notion that an individual's value is based on their whiteness, coupled with their sexuality, ableness, religious affiliation, and neurotypical development. How can we as members of the interfaith community work together to begin again?
Well, let me say very briefly that I'm a Christian. I'm a disciple of Jesus Christ. And the Bible that I read, preach, and teach from and live by dictates to me the value of every human person. Every person is made in the image of God, according to my Bible. And I believe that. And so we don't devalue others. We don't place a value on certain races. All people are important. All races are important. God made all of us, and all of us are equal in value in the eyes of God. And we're aware that when one thinks they're superior, then they have a need to denigrate others, to make themselves feel superior. But we know in the sight of God that none of us are inferior. So as a Christian, I stand upon God's word. I stand upon the Bible. I value every person, every individual, regardless of your race, regardless of your preferences, regardless of your ethnicity or gender. You are a valuable person, worthy of my love and worthy of my consideration, worthy of my respect, worthy of my consideration as an individual. And that's where I stand.
Thank you, Reverend Binion.
Pastor Binion brings up a very good point that happens in our community of Interfaith Alliance community members. It is a beautiful circle where many religions, many colors, many genders, and many other lines come together. And we weave this amazing fellowship. So fellowship, love and compassion starts with us. And nobody knows that better than that community and that fellowship, that Interfaith Alliance. And so for us to expand that circle out, I think is just as important. We must have the difficult discussions, especially about this book. You know, when I read that professor calling it the lie, you know, I mean, that never came into my mind to call it that, but that's the truth. This is the lie that America has been telling itself since it put foot here and said, this is mine and this is not yours. Yeah. I will draw a circle of God around me and my people, but not around yours. And I think what Pastor Binion just said is important. We must bring, and Dr. O'Connell, we must bring all communities of religion and faith communities together so that we can have that understanding. We are brothers and sisters. What happens to my brother happens to me. And I appreciate Pastor Binion for bringing that forward. Thank you.
I'd comment by what I think is a statement that's very based in a Christian tradition. I'll just say I take it from my own spiritual beliefs, that we must take up the position of the oppressed. And counterintuitively, that is an invitation to our own humanity. I have done peace work in the prisons here in Corcoran, Sadaf, Chowchilla, with the Alternatives to Violence Project, building a peace community in the yards there. We always have multiracial and multi-gang groupings. And you'll see these big people in the room with you. The white folks, everyone's tatted. The white people have swastikas everywhere and they're massive people. And I remember once, I'm a facilitator, I was a lead facilitator. This one I wasn't a lead facilitator, I was a facilitator. And I was so clear about my anti-racist stance that one of the white prisoners complained that I was being racist. And the lead facilitator was actually African-American. So she has two white guys, one accusing the other of being racist. And I had to laugh at that. But I had to tell this guy that racism doesn't go two ways. Discrimination, stereotypes, maybe, but racism is imbued with power. That, you know, just these polarized positions of that is in our language, male, female, black, white. This is a power designation that just immediately unevens the ground. And I say to all white people that racism doesn't go two ways. It's one way. We are complicit in it, and we have to actively call it out. And again, there's a lot of personal work every single one of us needs to do, but it's the institutions. All our institutions are above ground, and we should spend enormous amounts of time interrogating them. Budgets are moral documents. If the cops are getting 50% of the budget, something's wrong, right?
Yeah.
I actually can also say as well that we must become intolerant of intolerance,
Mm.
if I can put it that way.
Yes.
We will not, no one in my presence will be allowed to be disrespectful to another person. I won't tolerate it. I will not tolerate. And even in, well, my children are all very much grown. Our children were not allowed to make racial slurs, racial jokes, to denigrate another race. They didn't do that. Even when their friends came by, my wife and I corrected them because we felt that this was a value in our house. And I think all of us again need to have a level of intolerance when it comes to this, that we will not again allow anyone in our presence to be disrespectful or dishonoring of another person, regardless of their race or ethnicity or gender.
I think that's a really important point that you both make of where are our personal values and how are we going to be aligned with how we act as people in our community. I always think about who is like one of the most marginalized communities. And I always think about the Black trans individual who is differently abled. And how does all of the laws that are in place now either harming or helping that person? And I think that that's an important place to place yourself, ourselves, myself, with that self-work of how is my behavior adding to this harmful practice of racism. And with that, I'd like to ask another question. Glaude says, instead, he ran toward the trouble, the terror and fear, because he understood that facing it honestly was our only possible path to salvation. If you're scared to death, walk towards it, he said. How have each of you used your faith to walk towards it, to walk towards racism?
Go ahead, Dr. Dan.
I'll go first. I had a friend, Graciela Martinez, single mom, activist, recently died in the last year, Quaker. I couldn't figure how she could bear so much pain and witness so much injustice. And still, all the pressures of being a mom. And I asked her one day, how do you do it? And she looked at me and she said, and it still to this day animates a core phrase that always comes back to me when I'm afraid. And if we're not afraid, we're not actually confronting the power structure, right? Because they are powerful. She said, Dios por delante. I said, oh, God goes before us, huh? She goes, yes, I have faith that when I'm walking, God is in front of me. I'm walking behind God. And, the term God is, I sometimes put it in quotes because it embodies a lot of baggage, but that spirit is right. The spirit of love and the fearlessness to walk into it. We just lost Zoya Zindal, a very close friend of mine from the community here, transgender. We meet people like Zoya in the struggle, the most beautiful, beautiful people imaginable. Every single time, the closer we are to those that are the most vulnerable, we find the greatest humanity. And the farther you get, those agribusiness and sprawl developers, do you think they care? And they're not very beautiful people to be around, I would say. We should still invite to them, but I'd prefer to build community with the beloved community of that's the people that are linking arms together. And it's even better when it's multiracial, intergenerational, and gender inclusive. Diversity will get us to democracy.
In response to your question, Ashli, again, my faith dictates, and being a disciple of Jesus Christ, it's not a cliche with me, but it's how I live my life. What would Jesus do? how would he handle the situation? How would he respond to this dilemma? And that really guides and directs my life. One of the things that we do constantly in Southwest Fresno is advocate for people. And people in the community know, I got a big mouth and much attitude. So they know that I will go to the school. Of course, our city councilman, we have a great relationship with him, and our congressmen and all the entities and all of the, players, as you would say, institutions in my community, I'm very engaged with, primarily so that I can advocate in what's best for our folks. The other day, a young man called me up and said, Pastor Binion, yes. He said, well, I'm Hispanic and I'm wondering, will you help me? And I started laughing. I said, you're what? I don't care what. I have a bad habit now of saying flavor instead. I said, what flavor are you again? He said, I'm Hispanic. I said, you're God's child, aren't you? He said, yeah. Well, what do you need? Hey, there was a situation at school with his child.
Yeah.
But again, it's not, again, a cliche. I want to say that. I really live by this. What would Jesus do? And how would he handle it? And how would he respond to that? That what dictates my actions. And again, I don't care who you are. I don't care, again, your social economic situation. I don't care what age you are. I don't care where you come from. You're an individual. And as far as I'm concerned, you're God's child. You're worthy of respect and honor and dignity. And I'm going to give it to you.
I'm going to echo the same. Where I am, God is. I know that wherever I go in Fresno, that's where God has led me. And if I am talking to people in the post office and making someone laugh to me, or somebody's being grumpy about how long it's taking, I'm there for the reason to hold the place of sacred prayer, whether it is out loud or just sending him as much love or her as much love as I possibly can. Because in my heart, just as my good brothers here have stated, we are equal. In our diversity is what makes us beautiful. That rainbow connection of God's light and God's love, that's what we hold, and we don't ever let that go.
Thank you, Reverend Anna. So really what I'm hearing from all three of you is this theme of love and acceptance through our differences, that we are not looking to only help certain groups, that all together, that we want to use our love and our ability to bring our communities together.
We hold that faith, Ashli, and we hold it strong in our heart because we truly believe God loves all.
Yeah.
We need to be careful when we start this invitation, that it sounds so perfect. We have to attack white supremacy. We have to attack. We should disturb the churches that are racist. We should walk in the door and disturb those churches. We should protest. We should, when we see city council members or elected officials that are not, that are racist or bringing forward racist policies, we have to act on that. We cannot be passive. So yes, the invitation to the beloved community, the diversity, yes, but there are people that are benefiting from this set system, and it's not going to be easy to change this. You could see the enormous frustration with Baldwin, and that we should take to heart. He was heartbroken and pissed. We should be the same. At the same time, as ferocious as that.
James Baldwin was asked that question, what do you want? I hear Black Power and it makes me afraid. And now we're hearing Black Lives Matter and everybody's afraid. We're asking the same thing. And this is what James Baldwin said. Leave us alone. Let us live life. We want to live life as fully and as prosperous as you. I just wanted to bring that one forward.
Yes, thank you. And with that, we have about 5 minutes left. So I wanted to give everyone a chance that if you wanted to give your 60-minute conclusion or last minute words of thought, whoever would like to go first, feel free. No pressure, Reverend Binion, but you're the only one that is not muted.
Well, again, I want to say, again, I appreciate and grateful for the opportunity, grateful for the coming together of our city. And I trust our message is clear. But also, I trust it's also clear that laws and legislation will not get this done. This comes from a matter of your heart. This comes not because it's written in a law, not because it's some federal or local or municipal statute. What we're talking about comes from a heart and a mind and of caring about people and caring about the community and making sure that fairness and equity, again, is extended to all people, regardless of who they are. And that, I think, is so very, very important. It comes from here. It comes from here. It comes from here.
Thank you.
I came to Quakerism from my activism. I was leading protests in Santa Cruz against wars, against imperialism. In the back of the room, I saw some 80-year-olds, happy as anything. Oh, I was like, what is with you? You know, they were in the front of the line, always ready to get arrested, and they had been arrested many times, fearless. And I said, when I'm 80 years old, I want to be like that. So I said, who are you? And so they said, we're Quakers. I became, over time, a Quaker. When I was at Ithaca in New York at the Cornell, the meeting asked me to present to their children on being an activist. And there was no separation from being an activist and being a Quaker anymore for me, because we Quakers, we still ourselves to listen to the voice of God, and we're obligated. It's not easy to know what the voice of God is telling you. And therefore, you can become mystic at that point, because when you hear it clear, you must do it, right? So I invite everyone to quiet themselves, to listen to what their conscience, to what the voice of God says. That will be love, and to go achieve it diligently, determined. And the other thing is, Quakers win their fights. You know, it just takes hundreds of years. So get ready, buckle down, you know.
Thank you.
I agree. Let's do it. Someone who is of color and has been pulled over many times and accused of many things simply because of the skin of my color, the color of my skin. Racism never leaves us, but we don't let it stop us. Thank you.
Could I just add one quote by James Baldwin here as I've been going through my book? I think it might be something that really talks about our words and our actions. He wrote, "I can't believe what you say because I see what you do." I think for all of us and for my students, words are important, words matter, but your actions matter more. And you heard today people talk about heart and faith. Let those be your guides to your actions and to your words. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing this space with us. I'd like to invite back to the stage Jim Grant.
I am more grateful than I can have words to express to Dr. Goldsmith, to Ashli, to Dr. O'Connell, to Reverend Binion, and to Reverend Lopez for how you opened up that first bit of the wonderful book by Eddie Glaude, James Baldwin, Begin Again. Thank you so much for what you have shared of your personal lives, much more than only citing what these other great people have done. Thank you for your commitment to racial reckoning here in the Valley. Secondly, our book study will continue next week, Monday, March 1st, from 4 to 5 p.m., just like today. Rabbi Dr. Laura Novak Weiner will give us a heartfelt introduction to chapters 2 and 3 of Eddie Glaude's book, And then Sukaina Hussein and Lady Jessica Kreiner will share from their respective Islamic and Christian perspectives their response, just as we did today. I ask you to visit our book study bio pages on the ISW website, and you'll see so much more about the people that will be on our panel next week. Please register, if you haven't, for the program at interfaithscholar.org. Thirdly, we invite you, if you could, to create your own independent Zoom circle for sharing. Let us know about it on the comfort page, on the contact page, of the ISW website. Fourthly, please help us out by filling out the evaluation which we will be sending to each and every registrant for this session today. Fifthly, this ISW webinar series is in 6 sessions. It's all free. And it's going to be recorded for future use and for future viewings. But please, if you could, support our efforts by visiting interfaithscholar.org and clicking that little donate button to help us out with the finances. Thank you. Lastly, thanks for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you and all your friends next Monday at 4 p.m. But till then, take care, be safe, have a good week, and become, any way that you can, anti-racist, anti-sexist, and anti-white supremacy thinking. And do as the guests have told us, don't just not like it, defeat it. Till next week, God bless.